Welcome back to the Change Starts Here podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Odham, and I'm so glad you're joining us for episode 3 in our 5-part series on paradigms, which, if you're not familiar with paradigms, they're basically the mental maps that shape how we see the world, the actions we take, and the results that we get. If you've been following along, you know that episode 1, we explored the power of paradigms and how changing the way we see things impacts everything we do. In episode 2, we tackled the shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset and how that shift can transform leadership even in the most challenging of circumstances. And today, we're taking one of the most critical paradigm shifts in leadership, moving from reactivity to proactivity. And it's one that I know that all of us struggle with, no matter, any aspect of our life. So Dr. Covey famously stated, "I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions." Now, I know that can be challenged in a lot of ways. And so I want to make sure I'm being clear. We're not trying to make some political claim here. Like, there are real circumstances and real challenges people face in life. So I'm not trying to make light of it. The point is that we have to focus on what we can control the most. And so think about that for a moment. I am not a product of my circumstances. I'm a product of my decisions. As leaders in education, it's easy to feel like we're constantly reacting to fires, whether it's a budget cut, a policy change, a difficult parent, which I'm sure none of you have had before, or a student struggling with circumstances outside of school. But what if I told you you have more control than you think? Being reactive means letting external circumstances dictate your mood, your decisions, and ultimately your results. Being proactive means taking ownership of your responses and focusing on what you can control. Today, we're going to explore what it means to be proactive and how to expand your influence as a leader, and how this shift can change everything from the way you approach your daily frustrations to how you lead transformational change in your school and in your district. So let's start by defining reactivity and proactivity in real terms. Reactive leaders operate in response mode. They say things like, if we only had more funding, we could make real change. I can't do anything about this because it's a district policy. This year has been tough because of factors that are outside of our control. And again, all of us just went through COVID, so we know that statement couldn't be more true. It's just a matter of, what do you do when that's true? So this year has been tough because of factors outside of our control. That's true. The answer is, so what? Reactive leadership makes you feel stuck, like you're at the mercy of whatever's happening around you. And while it's true that some things are out of our control, in fact, many things can be out of our control, there's definitely a better way forward. An inverse of this, proactive leaders shift their focus to what they can influence. Instead of waiting for change to happen, they make change happen. They ask, what's one step I can take even within the limits of our budget? How can I creatively work within policies to better serve my teachers and students? What part of this challenge is within my control? The difference between reactivity and proactivity isn't about ignoring challenges. Those are real. It's about taking responsibility for your response. This brings us to one of the more powerful tools that I've experienced as a leader. And it's the circle of concern versus the circle of influence. I'm sure almost every one of you, I hope, have been exposed to this at some point. So Dr. Stephen Covey introduced a simple but life-changing framework. He said, you have the circle of concern, and this includes everything that worries us, but it is outside of our control. So that could include, in our education landscape, state and federal policies, school funding, the behavior of others, economic conditions, district decisions. Now, inside that, you have what we call the circle of influence. And this includes everything that we can control or influence. So that may be how we lead our teams, how we respond to adversity, the culture we build in our schools, and our personal attitude and effort. Here's the key insight. Proactive leaders focus their energy on their circle of influence. Instead of spending time frustrated over things they can't change, they take action where they can make a difference. And when that happens, something amazing happens. Your circle of influence expands. So you go from focus on this tiny little circle of influence of how do I take these baby steps to through those baby steps, you have more influence on the things that were frustrating you originally. The more you focus on what you can do, the more impact you have. And over time, you start influencing things that once felt way beyond your reach. Now, let me share a quick real example that I remember when I was back in my school district. I was once working with a school administrator named Lisa. We'll just call her Lisa for today, who was leading a high needs school. Teachers were burned out, student engagement was low, and morale all across the board was at an all-time low. When I would check in with Lisa, at first, she fell into reactivity. She felt overwhelmed. Often, she would say things like, Dustin, if we only had more funding, we could provide better resources. If the district would just change its policies, we could better support our teachers. And let's be very clear, I did not disagree with any of those statements. I did think we needed funding for certain areas in our school district. And I did believe and do believe that the policies were limiting our ability to really support our teachers at the highest level. But at some point, through enough conversations, she decided to make a decision. She was going to have a proactive mindset. And we actually went through the 7 Habits book and Circle of Concern versus Circle of Influence. So it was an awesome moment for us. Instead of focusing on what she couldn't change, she zoomed in on what she could. So she started small. And this is crazy how small it was. This was her idea. Every morning, she decided to greet students and staff by name, bringing energy into the building. So she just made sure she was present, smiling, welcoming, walking around, making sure she touched base with every staff member in just a very, very small way. She focused on teacher support. She created what they called, I think it was a Win Wednesday tradition, where every Wednesday she recognized the teacher's hard work publicly with a handwritten note and a small celebration. Again, it was not a massive amount of budget. We didn't have a lot of money there, but we figured out a way to do it. And I guess this is all her, not me. She sought creative solutions when funding was an issue. And like I said, it was. She built relationships with local businesses and nonprofits to bring in extra results or extra resources. Within a year, the culture had transformed. Unfortunately, she did so good, she got hired away, which she deserved, and did all those things. But teacher retention improved, student engagement increased, and Lisa's influence, not just in her school, but across the district, grew. People were trying to figure out, how do I tackle problems the way Lisa does? And remember, Lisa didn't all of a sudden get more funding or different policies. What changed was her mindset. She stopped focusing on the problem she couldn't fix, and she started focusing on where she could make an impact. That's the power of proactivity. So before we leave, I just want to challenge you to think, how can you apply this paradigm shift in your own life and leadership? On the personal side, I would just say take control of one recurring frustration you have. Think about something that regularly frustrates you. Maybe it's a difficult relationship. Maybe it's lack of time to do something, or a recurring issue, in your school or life somewhere. And ask yourself, am I focusing on my circle of concern or my circle of influence? I do this all the time, especially with my kids right now. What is one small action I can take today to create change? Again, it doesn't have to be grand. I just gave you Lisa's example, which is just getting to school and making sure saying hi and celebrating and creating momentum through one small action. Professionally, you can shift from blame to action. As a leader, model this shift for your teams. Instead of focusing on what's wrong, shift the conversation to, okay, guys, what is within our control? How can we take action today to make an impact? These small shifts change team culture from complaining about problems to creating solutions. The last thing I would just say, I'm really enjoying, I have a friend who's kind of mentoring me right now, and I love when he challenges me to take a step, write something down, do something. So I'm just going to try to pass along that idea to you all. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with the challenge. Write down one area where you've been reactive. Maybe it's frustration over district policies, a tough situation with a colleague, or a challenge in your personal life. Ask yourself, how can I take proactive steps to change it? And then take one small action this week to move from reactivity to proactivity. Again, write down one area where you've been reactive. Ask yourself, how can I take proactive steps to change it? And then just take one small action that moves you from reactivity, proactivity. Because remember, you're not a product of your circumstances. You're a product of your choices. I can't thank you enough for continuing to join us here. I hope this episode, it's our third episode out of 5 in our Paradigm series, is one that has helped you. Remember, being proactive isn't about ignoring challenges. It's about taking responsibility for how we respond to them. I'll say it again. Being proactive isn't about ignoring challenges. It's about taking responsibility for how we respond to them. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a colleague or a friend who might need to hear it. And please be sure to tune in next month as we explore the shift from urgency to importance. And I just a quick disclaimer. I know I keep saying all these paradigms have made a huge impact in my life, and they have. But I remember my first year of teaching where I created this quadrant to help me make the shift from the urgent to the important. And it revolutionized my ability to teach and lead others. And so I just want to strongly encourage you to tune in next month. Until next time, keep leading with your heart, keep challenging your paradigms, and remember, change truly starts here. Have a great day.